what I'm doing, as you may know if you've looked at some of the other series, is that I'm giving you information, high-level information that you will need as a project manager if you're managing a type of cybersecurity or information security project. That's what the whole goal of this is. So what I want to start doing that I haven't done in the others is to make it real for you. Do a real example, a real project, and not necessarily the stuff that you already know. As a project manager, you probably know all the plan, build, test, deploy models, you know, all the waterfall, all the agile different models. That's not what we're doing here. I'm helping you with stuff you don't know, you know, the vocabulary, the terms, the history of the project that you are focused on. So in this project, we will focus on, let me put it on the screen, there we go. Your PM, and this is the scenario, it's a cybersecurity project. Let's say you're with a 100-person company or less. Now you're growing and you have offshore contractors, excuse my my penmanship, and you want contractors or guests or interns, whomever, to be able to remote into the network. So what type of network do you use? What type of technology do you use? Like I said, we already talked about topologies, tree, bus, mesh, and all of that stuff. But what if you're not on the network? How do you connect? Well, obviously, you've probably heard of a VPN. So this is the project that you're working on. You want to establish a VPN. That would be the normal solution. But what type and what's the technology? So let's get started on talking about some of those things. You know, first thing you need to know that may come up with your subject matter experts is that you may talk about tunnels. So let's talk about tunnels. All right, so let me write that here, tunneling. What is tunneling? Basically, when you have a connection from here, you have a connection from here to here, right? A dedicated path connecting computer A or system A to system B. A dedicated path, that's a tunnel. All right, well, you may say, well, I thought that's a VPN. No, that's not a VPN. It doesn't become a VPN until, hold on, let me change my stuff. I didn't get what I want. It doesn't become a VPN until you encrypt this tunnel, which means you make it so that anybody who may be monitoring the data can't see what you're actually sending. So when you encrypt it, then it becomes a VPN. So a VPN is always a tunnel. It's an encrypted tunnel, but not all tunnels are VPN. All right, so that's something I really want you to know. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the technology. And so I'll go back to my regular pen. Oops, I think that's too big. Don't hear that often. Let's talk about some of the technology. All right, so stuff just got real. What in the world are these people talking about in your meetings? They're talking about PPP, PPTP, VPNs. They're talking about MS CHAP, PAP. That's what we're going to discuss today. SSH, SSH1, SSH2, SSH3, SSL, TLS. That's what we're all going to discuss. That's what we're going to discuss right now. So that was a long introduction to just get to this point. I mean, it's like 4 minutes now, right? And I was just talking. I'm crazy, right? All right, so let's go ahead and talk about, let's talk first about PPTP. The first thing you want to know, first of all, I got 15 minutes to talk, so I can talk as long as I want. And this is just part one. All right, so let's talk about PPTP. PPTP stands for point-to-point, like I mentioned before. See, right here, point-to-point. Point-to-point tunnel. Point-to-point tunnel protocol. All right, so this was one of the first protocols for tunneling. And I'll just basically go over what was bad about it. The bad thing is that it was totally easy. Okay, I said totally easy. It wasn't totally easy. But the problem is that the data from here to there, it used MS CHAP for the encryption, right? But the problem with this particular MS CHAP, it was version 1. Is that this encryption, this stuff in red, was basically the key. Remember, I don't know if you saw another video, but the key to do the encryption was based off the password, which is a big no-no. The first rule of encryption is that the key should be as random as possible. But because it was basically the user's password that was the encryption key to encrypt the data, it proned itself for being guessed. So a hacker or an attacker could actually guess the password and then break the encryption because they would know the key. So that was the one thing that doomed PPTP. Also, they came out with a version 2 of this, which was a little bit better, but still it wasn't as efficient as it relates to the encryption as it could have been. So with that said, the real problem is that you don't have two-factor authentication with it. And I talk about defense in depth on some of the other videos, and basically you want as much defense as possible. And because it was the password, it didn't offer as much defense in depth as possible. But MS Chapter is not bad. Matter of fact, I think I'll talk about it right now. This wasn't really part of this presentation, but since I'm here, MS Chapter. So you have different encryption technology. MS Chapter was actually one of the best at the time, and it's still used. So you have encryption of password and then databases. Let me draw a line here so you don't get it mixed up. So with PAP, you encrypt passwords, right? But not databases. And with CHAP, you encrypt databases, but not passwords. And now in some cases this is fine depending on your purpose. So I'm telling you this so when you're going through your requirements with your projects, SME, subject matter expert, depending on what you want to do, you'll know which one you need. And MS Chap actually encrypts both the database or your data and the password. So that's why they actually use MS Chap. But it doesn't help you if the encryption is weak. And again, the encryption was based off the password, which is a big no-no, you know, when it comes to two-factor authentication. And I could talk a lot more about that. So anyway, because of this, Cisco came up with L2F, which offers some help as it relates to frame relay. I'm going to take this equal off. Frame relay and ATM. And I'll talk about this later on another video. And actually, a lot of this stuff is going to be in my cryptography section videos, which I'll make probably next week or so. All right, L2F. And so, but when you combine PPTP plus L2F, you're actually going to get L2TP, which is a hybrid and pretty much the best of both worlds as relates to what they actually offer. So when you hear them say L2TP, you know it derived from the L2F, which is from Cisco, and the PPTP, but the PPTP had the vulnerabilities because of the encryption. All right, so let's move on to the next. I'm running out of space on this page, so let's start a new page. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about VPNs in general. I think Telnet is one of the protocols that was used to actually, you know, make popular connecting to a remote system. The problem with Telnet, again, is that, well, first of all, this was for trusted systems. This was back when people trusted this isn't even the internet, but the information going from one computer to the other computer. So there was no encryption. And if there's a man in the middle, well, this isn't the middle, but let's just say there's a man in the middle looking at all of this data. Since there's no, first, it lends itself so that man in the middle attack can take place, but also if there's no encryption, he can see everything. So he has full view of all the data. So that's what was wrong with Telnet. So what they decided to do is that they decided to come up with some other stuff. SSH, you may have heard of this. Secure shell hash, I believe that's what it is. And actually, I'll talk a little bit about what was wrong with SSH. Actually, before I talk about what was wrong with SSH, let's talk about why you want to use SSH. First of all, it prevents that stuff. Not the encryption, but the man in the middle. It prevents man in the middle, and session hijacking. Session hijacking is when, you know, somebody can come in and take over the connection. All right, so it prevents that. And also what it actually does is that it has very strong authentication. And it also has some encryption. Now, isn't that fancy? So why is that so fancy? Well, it still, remember the other one, MS Chap, it had passwords. Well, when you authenticate by putting in your password, it's not in clear text. So when you, let's say you have this and this point, and you send your password, that actually sends the password separately as an encryption. Let me go to my trusty red. Hold on, because I like to use red for encryption. It's encrypted. So this guy right here, in this case, he really can't see anything. All right. So why wouldn't you use SSH now? Well, it's older, and so the use of it is becoming discontinued very shortly at the time of this video being made. All right, and what do you use this for? Hold on, let me change my pins again. So why, you know, what changed? So when SSH came about, you can now do file transfer. Right? You know how you send a file from somebody, you know, from your computer to another computer. You could do remote login. I think you could change ports. What else could you do? You could do all sorts of things that you couldn't do before. But the main thing is that, this would be a command execution. Basically, you could execute commands on the system. All right, so that's cool. So what about SSH2? Real important. So why do we need SSH2? SSH2 is important because, I mean, SSH wasn't totally flawless. There's this thing called an insertion attack. That I'm not going to talk about all the attacks now, but it's susceptible to insertion attacks. I should have done that in red. Well, what I'll do is I will highlight in red, or circle it in red. I like to put the bad guys in red. It's open to insertion attacks. So therefore, SSH came along. Oops, wrong color. SSH came along and it defeated the insertion attack. And actually, again, I'm in another video, I will talk more in depth, but this is just for terms so that you understand, as the project manager, what's going on in this security video. And last but not least, and I'm running out of time on this video, SSL Tls Vpn. So what's special about this? You'll love this. You can use your web browser, you know, i.e. Chrome, to actually connect to apps on a network remotely, you know, and that's awesome.